Hello and welcome to Chatterbox. It gives me great pleasure to say we're joined by the one and only Ariel Helwani, all the way from New York. Surely it can't be any colder than it is here in London because it's outrageous over these sides.
Pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of the show, and it's an honor to chop it up with you, as they say.
There we go. You've been listening. You've been listening. Now I'm gonna dive straight in here, Ariel. I want to know what's the best fight you've seen this year, whether it be in person or on TV.
Oh my, that's a really good question because I think this has been a fantastic year for boxing. I would have to go with one that I saw in person, April 30th this past year, Madison Square Garden, the Mecca, the world's most famous arena. It was historic. It felt big going into it. Of course, the first time two women headlined MSG, Katie Taylor, who I'm such a huge fan of, and of course, Amanda Serrano. To me, that had it all. It had the history, it had the drama, it had the buildup, and the fight actually delivered. So I'm going to go with Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. That's my best fight of the year. And honestly, one of the best sporting events that I've ever attended live.
Great
I
minds
have to.
think alike. Great minds think alike. Ariel, that's my fight of the year, and I think more than what the fight really delivered, like you said, it was a fantastic fight and a competitive fight, but it was a really historic event, and I wasn't lucky enough to be there, but two of the greatest women female fighters of all time going toe to toe like that in the Mecca, it all kind of just added to that, just to make it even more special, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've got to say a big shout out as well as a fight, as a contender was Wood versus Conlon because
Oh,
the way that finished, that fight was absolutely incredible. It was like a wall of noise, and I don't think anyone expected it to finish how it finished with Lee Wood kind of going down early in the fight, going down heavy, and then eventually brutally stopping Conlon, knocking him out of the ring. That was right in front of me. So I've got to give a big shout out to that fight because I don't want it to go under the radar. Incredible fight.
you took the honorable mention right out of my mouth. I love that fight. That to me, honestly, one of the best fights that I've ever seen. Period. Just the back and forth action, the crowd. That was incredible.
I think one of the things with that fight was, although it was really intense and competitive, and both guys showed a lot of heart and grit, it was highly skilled. There was a lot of skill involved in that fight. It wasn't just a slugfest, and that's something that people forget about. It was an amazing fight.
Ariel, I want to get your view on a huge boxing fight that happened that maybe kind of changed the trajectory of heavyweights' careers because we've got Parker against Joyce, and that was a fight where people thought, right, are you ready to compete at a top level, Joe? Can you do it against someone who's been there, who's done that? What were your thoughts watching that fight?
Yeah, I thought the same. Obviously, UK heavyweight scene is incredible right now, and I think a lot of people are wondering if he could be that next guy. Daniel Dubois is another one of those guys. We're wondering if he could be that next guy. But I thought I thought he looked great on the night. I thought it was a great performance out of him. I don't know if he's quite at that level with those top guys just yet. But I mean, right now, I mean, if you compare the UK heavyweight scene to the American heavyweight scene with the guys that are coming out of the UK, not to obviously the Tysons of the world and all that, but even like the younger guys, the guys coming up like the Joyces, like the Dubois, compared to what we have here in America, I mean it's not even close. There is a name in America that I'm very, very high on, Jared Big Baby Anderson, who looks
Yeah.
amazing. He gets hit a lot. He got hit a lot in his short fight, but the guy doesn't know what a third round looks like. He's been unbelievable. He just fought this past weekend for Top Rank, and I think he's like our only hope. Our only hope. I say this as a Canadian/American. Deontay Wilder, of course, will probably see him back against Andy Ruiz, and that should be something of interest. And I thought he looked pretty good, obviously, in his return fight. But Jared Big Baby Anderson is a name to remember. Very young, I believe 13-0 off the top of my head. He's looked great, and that's pretty much the Americans' only hope right now for a promising heavyweight coming up the ranks.
2022 hasn't all been, smelling roses and happy days. We've had some low lights, and I want to kind of go through them and kind of get your opinion, both you and Carl. First of all, we can't not mention the Conor Benn situation. What did you make of that? And what I will say is, recently, I spoke to Conor, and he was like, "Listen, things have come to light. My team have proven my innocence." Do you believe that? Because as a person, knowing him personally, I don't feel that he has that in him to cheat
Can I
knowingly.
Can I jump in there? See the statements that are coming out. Like, I can prove it, but I'm going to keep you waiting. Like, what are we waiting on? If you can prove your innocence, prove your innocence.
Now, another low light for me personally, I want to find out if it's the same for you, is Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall, that rematch not happening.
Oh yeah, because the first fight was an absolute robbery. I mean, it was one of the worst decisions that I've ever seen. It was, look, this is going to be a part of boxing forever, and it's funny because I also cover MMA, right? And in MMA, we see robberies. We just saw one recently with Paddy Pimblett, but we see robberies in MMA more so because we are using the boxing model, the boxing scoring model, to score fights that are very different than boxing matches, right? The 10-point must system does not apply to mixed martial arts. This was a really bad decision. I'm a big proponent of open scoring. I feel like open scoring would at least let the fighter who's about to get screwed know that, all right, clearly the judges don't know, or they don't know what they're looking at, or they're not scoring for me. So at least I have to do something, as opposed to getting to the final, point of the night. The fight is over. You can't do anything anymore. And now they've just robbed you of all this glory, who knows, money, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the fight where I've gone on this open scoring crusade this year for MMA and boxing. But as far as boxing is concerned, that was the one that really made me say, like, at the very least, if these guys are going to get screwed, let them know that they're about to get screwed. And in this case, I think it could have helped. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on that, because I don't know if corruption or bad scorecards or anything like that is ever going to change. But at the very least, a little transparency, a little accountability could go a long way.
I think it could be something that helps fix the problem. And it is a problem that we're having with bad scorecards. And you get a printout of judges' score after a fight, and you look at a round that has been pretty one-sided, and the judge is giving it the other way, and you're kind of like, what? Am I seeing something different? Is there something else going on here? It was interesting. It was done for a while in amateur boxing, kind of the scores were coming up, and I didn't mind it, and I'd always give a chance. If someone knew they were behind, they would try and they would fight hard, and sometimes it made the fights a little bit more exciting as well. So I think you bring an interesting point there, Ariel, and I think it's something that could be looked at.
Would you like to see referees and judges have to explain their decisions maybe after a fight? Almost like, you speak to the fighters after the fight, and you kind of ask them the deepest, darkest secrets, what they were thinking, within those 12 rounds or 10 rounds or 6 rounds, whatever it may be. Would you like to see maybe judges and referees kind of held to account by the media or by a journalist?
Well, they do by the Board of Control, the British Board of Control. If there's been a decision that there's been a lot of kickback and people don't like, and it's clearly the wrong decision, they'll be called into a board meeting. They'll speak to the board officials, and then that's it. Really, there's not a lot.
It's still not transparent.
Really,
it's you don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's a point. Then maybe open it up and let people like Ariel, people from the media, interview these guys and try and get their opinion on it. That could be something as well.
I want to quickly just touch on Spence against Crawford falling apart again. Obviously, Spence was involved in a horrible car crash last week, but thankfully appears to escape with kind of minor injuries, which is brilliant. But that fight, it never quite gets across the line. It's a fight where you want to see who's almost. It's like a clash of the pound for pound number ones in that division. So,
I was looking at lists from last year on fights that need to happen in 2022, and that was at the top of the list. And I would say once again, for 2023, that's the fight that needs to happen.
If you pit these two guys against each other or against any other welterweight on the planet, then they win. It's clear they're clearly the top two guys in the division, and a lot of people aren't sure as to who wins the fight or who's the better guy, and that's why they need the fight. And we shouldn't look at examples like Pacquiao Mayweather, because that happened way too late, and we don't want it to be the case with this fight. But we should look to the four kings and Duran and Hagler and Leonard and Hearns, and these guys fighting each other in their prime. That's what we need, and that was the era of boxing. That was the greatest era, in my opinion, for boxing. We need something done to make the big guys fight each other. Really.
Listen, we're gonna dig into that a little bit later, but right now we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we'll be looking forward to 2023, which could very well be a vintage year for boxing. Hello and welcome back to the final part of Chatterbox in 2022. Now, we've talked a lot about the boxing highlights and lowlights of this year, but it's time to focus on 2023, which promises to be the biggest year in the heavyweight boxing division since 1999, when Lennox Lewis was the last champion to hold all the belts. Now, there are some huge fights to be made, Ariel, not at least Fury Usyk. How do you see that one going? And will it actually happen?
Oh man, I think it will happen. I feel like we are closer than ever. Um, how do I see it going? Gosh, I would love to hear Carl's thoughts on this. I think Fury's going to have some trouble with Usyk. I think he's quick, he's powerful. I think he's one of the best pound for pound fighters on the planet. Ultimately, though, I'll go with a decision for Fury. I'll say that Fury's size and the way he commands the ring and just the way he boxes is incredible. Obviously, his last two fights weren't really much challenges, but I still think he has a little left in the tank. So I'll go with Fury. But most importantly, I don't really care who wins. I just want to see it happen, and I think it will be one of the great scenes in recent memory. And I feel like we're close, and hopefully, we won't get 8 retirements from Tyson Fury between now and then, and we won't get all this nonsense. Like, just make the freaking fight happen. This is the one, guys. You're right there. Get it done.
Like Ariel says, I think there's some issues in the fight for him. It's not an easy night, but I think that Fury would win a pretty clear points decision.
We definitely hope that we can all see that fight, because it's one that's been in the making for a long time. Now, we've had noises from Eddie Hearn about a potential fight between AJ and Wilder.
I got a feeling that Joshua doesn't want to fight him. That statement just, I think, made Joshua say, I'm not going in the ring with that. And look, if not, we're fighting Ruiz. It'll be early in next year. And then we'll see. Look, Usyk said if he wins, he'll fight us. You never know.
Ariel, talk to me. Is Shelley spitting facts when he's saying that AJ doesn't want any smoke when it comes to Wilder?
I think AJ has to figure out a lot of things. He's changing up his training camp again. Does he go to America now? Does he go train there? Does he let someone take control of his career? Does he continue to act like his own boss? I think the former would be the right move for him at this point. Where's he going to go? He's not with Garcia anymore, it seems like. So he's got to figure out all that stuff before he goes into a fight like that. What I would suggest Eddie Hearn and company do is just get him a win. Even if it's against a lackluster opponent, get his confidence back, and then we look at a Wilder fight maybe back into the year.
So, guys, I think we can all agree that Usyk and Fury are at the top of the tree when it comes to the heavyweight division. But who's coming in at number 3? Who has the best chance of potentially wrestling those belts away from either Fury or Usyk? I
think it's Joe Joyce. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ariel, but I think you would probably agree with that. He's the type of fighter who you don't really fight unless you're forced to fight him, and he's in that mandatory position because it's always going to be an ugly fight. He's someone who literally soaks up punishment. He is as fit as a little bantamweight. He throws hundreds of punches. So fit, tough. It's like he's no real rhythm either. Everything's it's slow and stuff, but there's no rhythm to it. It's hard to catch it, figure out his rhythm, because he doesn't have one. It's a really strange style, but I think that I'm not saying he beats the guys at the top, Usyk and Fury, but he's the one who comes closest, certainly. I think he gives them all a hard night.
So the heavyweight division is flying. We've spoken about some of those matchups that we wish to see. Now, Ariel, what are some of the other big fights that you want to see made in 2023? What's on your Christmas list?
Oh, man, there's one that comes to mind right away, and that's Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis. I think that could be one of the biggest fights of the year. I think he could do huge business here in the United States. They both have very, very passionate fan bases, devoted fan bases. I mean, they're just perfect. They're young. One's Hispanic, one's coming from the African American community. I mean, it's just like a promoter's dream. And again, I worry about the promoters, right? I worry about them getting involved and screwing it all up. And even telling us it felt like we were watching the same movie as Crawford Spence. Like, oh, we're right there, but this guy's going to fight another fight in January, and then we're going to circle back to it. Like, we've all seen this movie before. But I think that if they could get it done in the spring or something like that, that would be incredible. Two young guys in their prime, that would be fantastic. I'd also love to see Devin Haney versus Lomachenko. I think that would be a great fight.
That's the one I wanted. Haney against Lomachenko. I think it's a difficult fight to call. It's a fantastic fight as well. Haney is a much better fighter than I thought he was a year ago. I always appreciated him and understood that he was a good fighter, but his last couple of wins, he's really impressed me. Lomachenko has impressed me for as long as I've seen him box. He's an unbelievable fighter with a completely unique style. But to bring it back to the UK a little bit, I think a really interesting fight. Well, a trio of fights really. And we'll say the UK and Ireland would be Lee Wood, Mick Conlon, Josh Warrington. A little trilogy thing going on there. Any fights amongst them three guys, I think, would be fantastic as well.
Absolutely. We pray that we see those fights in 2023. Now, on the completely other end of the talent spectrum, shall we say, Tommy Fury, Jake Paul. Is that a fight that you want to see? How do you see that fight going?
Honestly, I'm a little bit surprised they're going back to the well, because we've already gone through this twice already and it has fallen through. And I'd love to hear Carl's thoughts, but I think Jake wins this fight. I think I don't think it's that tough for him, to be honest.
I keep getting into trouble talking about Tommy Fury and Jake Paul, and I suppose, like you, I want to see the fight now. It was a fight that when it was first talked about, I didn't really care about it, but it's been talked about for that long. I really want to see what the outcome is, and I think that I'm kind of still on the same page as you. Is that I think that Jake Paul wins the fight, and when people talk about, and that's not, I don't want to do a disservice to Tommy Fury. I really don't, and I'm not trying to dig the kid out or anything like that. But he's at he's a similar sort of level to Jake Paul. Jake Paul, they've been boxing for a similar amount of time. I don't know if Tommy Fury was boxing as Tyson was when he was 10 years old or anything like that. He's a guy who's literally come onto the scene after being on Love Island, and now he's a boxer because his brother is. And he's improving, but he's a novice professional, as is Jake Paul. But what I like about Jake Paul is he looks like he trains hard. He looks like he's got the right team around him. He lives the life by all accounts. And I think one of the big issues for Tommy in the fight would be, I think he gasses a bit. And anytime I've seen him, after 4 rounds, he starts to blow. And I think that may be the issue for him in the fight. But I'm still sticking to my guns here. I'm going to say what I've said before, even before John Fury pulled me. But I always try to be honest.
I got your back. I got your back. All right.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Don't let them bully you.
I threw that in there because I knew I was going to get you in trouble, Carl. One fight that we saw that maybe surprised a few people in the boxing community: Canelo versus Bivol. Canelo obviously lost that. Is that a rematch that you want to see, or has it been done? Canelo dared to dream. You go up in weight and it doesn't work. Do we want to see that happen again?
I think that Bivol is just too big, too long, too rangy, too good for him to go all the way up there and fight him. And by the way, with all due respect to Dimitri Bivol, he's not a big enough name for him to go up and do this and take this risk. It's not like he's some generational superstar where Canelo's like, I got to get this one. He's not that guy. But it's not, to me, a fight that has to happen, and I think it would be a big misstep on their part if they do it.
Okay, guys, we've spoken about some of the biggest names in boxing. And Carl, we actually touched on some of your pound-for-pound list. I want to see the official Ring Magazine pound-for-pound list, and then also the BoxRec pound-for-pound list, and we'll see where your top 5 matches up. Let's have a look. This is the Ring Magazine pound-for-pound rankings. Usyk, number 1. Inoue, number 2. Crawford, number 3. Spence Jr. at 4. And Canelo Alvarez at 5, closely followed by Dimitri Bivol and Vasily Lomachenko. Now let's go to the BoxRec pound-for-pound rankings, and we'll work out kind of where they differ. So according to BoxRec, Canelo Alvarez steps in at number 1 in the pound-for-pound rankings, followed by Tyson Fury, Bivol, Crawford, Golovkin, and Usyk, and AJ at 7. Now, Carl, I'm very interested to hear yours. Give me yours first.
So I've got number 1 Usyk, I've got number 2, Inoue. Number 3, Canelo. I've got Crawford. And then I've got Bivol. And people may say, why have you not got Tyson Fury in it? And I think the reason why I have most of these guys in it is because they're in weight divisions. They were in weight divisions, which allows them to go up and going through weight divisions. Fury's in the top guy, in the heavyweight division. It's always difficult, isn't it? Pound for pounds. I don't really like doing them, but that was my goal.
I disagree with Ring. I disagree with BoxRec, and I disagree with you, Carl. You all got it wrong. Now, here's the thing: when it comes to pound for pound, you have to consider like strength of schedule, who they're fighting, their resume. You have to see who's moving up, who has room to move up, who is trying to get those big fights, who's beating the big names. Also, longevity. So all that in mind, to me, Terrence Crawford, number one. He's been doing it for so long. He's moved up. He continues to stop guys. He doesn't coast. He's an unbelievable fighter. And right now there's no one who's touching him. Spence, maybe. I still think he even beats Spence. All right. Number 2, I give to Usyk. Goes up from cruiserweight. He's beating tough guys at, heavyweight. Doesn't have the longevity, but still you got to give him, props for moving up and also the strength of schedule. Number 3 would be Dimitri Bivol for the win over Canelo and for what he's done since then. Canelo for me is still number 4. I don't think a loss moving up all the way and fighting a guy like Bivol should hurt him so much because not that long ago, most people had him as number 1. So I would put him number 4. And if I was just of skill alone, I would put Inoue all the way to the top, but I just don't think he has the strength of schedule. Again, to compare it to MMA, he kind of reminds me of Demetrius Johnson, who was the flyweight champion for so many years, 125, so close to Inoue, but wasn't fighting top level guys. And so that always hurt him as far as the pound for pound discussion was concerned. I know he can only fight who's put in front of him, and the Donaire win was big, but I just don't know if he's fighting the level of competition that some of those other guys are fighting. So he would be number 5.
Right, guys, incredible. Lovely to get your top 5 pound for pound fighters. Before we go, I really want to remind our viewers of our next fight that's live on BT Sport, and it's a big one. The beast from the East, Anthony Yard, is taking on the monster that is Artur Beterbiev. Now, I want to know what you think of that fight because it is going to be fireworks. Yard's up against it. You've got a knockout artist in there. Ariel, how do you see that fight go?
I love this fight. I would love to petition to BT Sport to have me out there for this fight because I will say I'm a little bit biased. Artur Beterbiev trains out of Montreal, which is where I'm from. He's a protege of George St. Pierre, who I think is the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. And I've been following his career very closely, and this is a big opportunity for him. I think Anthony is biting off a little more than he can chew. I think Beterbiev is going to smoke him. I think he's going to look great. I think he's going to stop him.
Carl?
I think it's a fight that doesn't go the distance. I don't even think it goes long, but I think it's very exciting while it lasts, and I think it could be like a 3-round fight, maximum 5 or 6. I don't see it being any further than that. And I think Yard has a chance because he can punch. We've seen Beterbiev on his backside before, but he gets up and wins. But in saying that, he's a killer, this guy. I don't know if you've seen the clip of him. There's a clip of him on YouTube doing this thing with an Olympic style barbell where he's got it in one hand and he's flipping it, like he's throwing it up and flipping it like a 20 kg barbell. The guy's a freak and like he's a monster. And not for that reason alone, but that's one of the reasons why I have him winning the fight.
No, it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. You don't think it's going to go long. I tend to agree with you. That is on January 28th live on BT Sport. Now, that is it for the final episode of Chatterbox this year. Thank you so much, Carl, Ariel, and Alex. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great Christmas, and we'll see you next year.